everyone. Let's dive into something that I know a lot of us find kind of intimidating, coding interviews. They can be really tough. But I was thinking about this the other day, and what if I told you that there's this secret weapon you can use? Something that might totally change the game for you.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people think that to ace these interviews, you need to know some crazy, obscure programming language or have every algorithm memorized.
Right, like you have to be some kind of coding robot.
Exactly. But it's really not about that at all. What's way more important, being able to spot those subtle hints that are kind of hidden within the interview questions themselves.
Wait, hold on. Are you serious? You're saying the questions themselves are giving us clues?
Absolutely. It's
Yep.
like the question is this treasure map, right?
Yeah.
And those hints are like little X's marking the spot, leading you to the most efficient, most elegant solution.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention. So, how does this work? Are we talking about, secret code words or something? Give me the inside scoop.
It's not so much about secret code words, but more about recognizing certain patterns and clues. Like, does the way they phrase the question or the specific details they give you point you towards a particular approach or algorithm? Things like that.
So it's about reading between the lines, being a little bit of a code detective.
Exactly. And recognizing those hints, it can actually help you in a bunch of different ways. It can help you solve problems faster, obviously, but it also helps you write cleaner code. And maybe more importantly, it shows the interviewer that you really understand the why behind the solution. You're not just blindly applying algorithms. You're thinking critically about the problem.
That makes so much sense because it's not just about finding a solution, it's about finding the best solution, the most efficient one, especially in a high-pressure situation like an interview.
You've got it. And the great thing about these hints is that once you learn to recognize them, they can really save you a ton of time and mental energy, allowing you to focus on showing off your coding skills.
This is amazing. I wish I had known this sooner. Okay, so no more messing around. Let's get down to business. What are some of the most common types of hints we should be looking out for?
So one of the first things to really pay attention to is the input data itself. We call these input characteristics. Like, is the data sorted or unsorted? What data types are we dealing with? Are there any constraints on the size of the input?
Oh, right, because those things can really change how you approach a problem, right?
Exactly. For example, let's say you're given a list of numbers, and you need to find two numbers that add up to a specific target value. This is actually a really classic interview question called the two-sum problem. Now, the problem might not tell you whether the list is sorted or not.
So they leave that up to us to figure out.
Exactly. And believe me, that little detail can make a huge difference. If the list is unsorted, you might use a hash map to solve it. But if it's sorted, you could use a much faster approach called the two-pointer technique.
Wow, so just knowing whether the list is sorted or not can completely change your strategy. That's crazy.
It's all about being observant and recognizing those little clues.
This is mind-blowing. So we've got clues potentially hiding in the input data. What about the output, though? Is there anything tricky there?
For sure. The output requirements can be just as revealing. Pay close attention to exactly what they want in the output. Do they just need a simple yes or no answer? Or do they need the actual values? Are they looking for one solution or multiple solutions?
Right. So it's all about the specifics.
Exactly. Let me give you another example. There's this problem called subarray sum equals k, where you need to find how many subarrays within an array add up to a specific value, k. Now here's the thing. The problem might or might not specify if the numbers in the array are all non-negative.
Okay, and I'm guessing that tiny little detail matters.
Big time. If the array can have both positive and negative numbers, you might need a more complex approach using a hash map. But if you know for a fact that all the numbers are positive, you can often use a much more efficient technique called the sliding window technique.
It's like they're hiding little shortcuts for us, but we have to be clever enough to find them.
I love that analogy because that's exactly what it is. It's like they're giving you a little cheat code, but only if you're paying close attention.
This is incredible. So we've talked about input characteristics. We've talked about output requirements. Are there any other places where these hints like to hide?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are also hints related to constraints and edge cases. These might be things like limits on how much time or memory your solution can use, or maybe some weird special cases or exceptions that you need to handle.
It's like they're setting up the boundaries of the problem, and those boundaries can guide us towards the solution.
Precisely. A great example here is the longest palindromic substring problem. Have you ever heard of that one?
Oh yeah, palindromes. Those are always fun.
Right. So in this problem, they ask you to find the longest sequence of characters within a string that reads the same backward as it does forward, like race car. But the real hint here is that they're specifically asking for a substring, which means the characters have to be next to each other in the original string.
So it's not just about finding any palindromic sequence. It has to be a continuous chunk.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that little distinction can really change how you approach the problem.
I'm starting to feel like these coding interviews are less about straight up coding and more about being a detective. It's like a whole different level of problem solving.
And guess what? The detective work doesn't stop there. Even the way they word the problem itself, the problem wording can hold valuable clues.
Wait a minute. Are you saying I need to channel my inner grammar nerd now? Like, should I be looking out for misplaced modifiers and stuff?
Laughs. Not exactly grammar, but yeah, the specific language they use can tell you a lot. For instance, if you see words like efficient, optimize, contiguous, or consecutive, or if they mention specific data structures like heap or try.
It's like they're giving us hints about the tools we should be using.
Exactly. It's like they're leaving little Easter eggs for the candidates who are really paying attention. They want to see who's really thinking critically about the problem, not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Wow, this is eye-opening. Seriously, I'm already starting to feel more confident about tackling these interview questions. But, okay, how do we get better at actually spotting these hints under pressure? Because when the clock's ticking, I tend to miss even the most obvious things.
That's a fantastic question and a perfect place to pause for now. When we come back, we'll discuss how to train your brain to spot these hints under pressure.
All right, so we're back, and we've been talking about all these hidden hints that are like sprinkled throughout coding interview questions.
It's like they're leaving us a trail of breadcrumbs, if we just know how to follow them.
Right, but how do we actually train ourselves to become like master hint spotters, especially when we're under pressure?
Well, it's like learning anything else. It really comes down to practice. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes.
Sure, yeah, practice makes perfect. But what are some practical tips? Like, what can we do to really start seeing these hints?
One of the most powerful things you can do is practice active reading. And I know that sounds kind of obvious, but a lot of people, when they get a problem statement, they just skim it really quickly.
Oh, yeah, totally guilty of that.
But it's so important to really slow down and dissect every single word, underline key phrases, circle any constraints they give you, maybe even jot down little questions that pop into your head as you're reading.
So don't be afraid to like mark it up and make it your own.
Exactly. You want to squeeze every last drop of information out of that problem statement.
Okay, so active reading. Got it. That makes a lot of sense. What about asking questions? Is it ever okay to ask the interviewer for clarification? Because I always feel like I should just know what to do.
You absolutely should ask clarifying questions. In fact, I would encourage it. It shows that you're really thinking deeply about the problem.
That's good to know because I think a lot of people, myself included, we're so afraid to ask questions in an interview. We think it makes us look unprepared or something.
Trust me, it's much better to take a moment to clarify something you're unsure about than to spend a bunch of time going down the wrong path because you misinterpreted something.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better. So we've got active reading, asking clarifying questions. It's like we're building our little detective toolkit. What else can we add?
This might sound a little obvious, but honestly, the more coding problems you solve, the better you'll become at recognizing these hints. It's all about pattern recognition.
Right, so it's like anything else, the more experience you get, the more those patterns will just kind of jump out at you.
Exactly. And then, of course, even with practice, you're not going to catch every single hint every single time. So another really important thing is to review solutions, even when you get the problem right.
Wait, so even if I solve the problem correctly, I should still look at other solutions?
Absolutely. It's so valuable to see how other people might have approached the same problem, especially if their solution is more efficient than yours.
So it's like we're reverse engineering the problem to see the thought process behind the most optimal solution.
Exactly. You're basically learning to think like the people who designed the interview questions in the first place.
That's actually really smart. And then, on the flip side, when we do make mistakes, when we do miss those hints, how can we use those moments to actually learn and improve?
That's where analyzing your mistakes comes in. When you do miss a hint, don't just brush it off. Really take some time to think about what you overlooked. Could you have phrased the question differently in your head? Could you have approached the problem from a different angle?
Yeah, because sometimes our biggest mistakes can be our greatest teachers.
Right, 100%. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow as a programmer.
I love that. So we've been talking a lot about the technical aspects of this, about how to recognize soft skills that come into play here.
That's such a good question, and the answer is absolutely. Because you see, when you can recognize these subtle hints in an interview setting, it shows the interviewer that you're not just a good coder, you're a great problem solver.
Right, because anyone can memorize algorithms, but this is about like real understanding.
Exactly. It shows them that you can think critically, break down complex problems, and come up with creative solutions.
It's like the difference between, I don't know, following a recipe and actually understanding the science of baking.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about knowing the steps, it's about understanding the why behind the steps.
Okay, this has been so insightful. I already feel so much more prepared to tackle these coding interviews. But before we move on, do you have any last words of wisdom for our listeners? Like, what's the one thing you wish someone had told you before you went on your first coding interview?
You know, honestly, the biggest thing is to just relax and be confident. Don't get too hung up on trying to find every single hint or worry about making mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes.
It's true. Even the most experienced programmers have all been there, right?
Exactly. So go easy on yourself. Just focus on doing your best, showing them what you know, and most importantly, enjoying the process.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, a coding interview is just a conversation around it.
That's exactly how you should think about it, is a chance to talk about what you love, which is coding.
I love that. Okay, so you've given us all of these amazing tools and strategies. I feel like we should try one out. Are you up for doing a little mock interview question with me?
I'd love to. Okay, so I'm not going to give you the answer or anything, but I will definitely be your guide on the side. I'll be here to prompt you, make you think about those hidden hints, and hopefully help you arrive at a really elegant solution. Ready to put on your thinking cap?
Absolutely. I'm ready for the challenge. Bring it on.
Okay, great. Let's imagine for a second that you're given a string, and this string only contains lowercase letters. Your task is to find the length of the longest substring that doesn't have any repeating characters. So think about ABCECB. The longest substring without repeating characters is ABC, which has a length of 3. What comes to mind?
Okay, let me think here. Find the longest substring without repeating characters. Got it. So
Yeah.
I'm already trying to think, like, where are those hints hiding?
I like your proactive attitude. That's what it's all about.
What should I be focusing on first?
Okay, great question. So first, let's think about the input. What are we working with here? What stands out?
All right, so we've got a string, right? And we know that it only contains lowercase letters. Is that significant? Does the fact that we have this limited set of characters, does that change anything?
You're on the right track. That's a really important observation. Because when you know you have a limited set of possible characters, it can really influence your choice of data structures and algorithms. If you had the full range of Unicode characters, some strategies would be much less efficient.
Oh, that's a good point. It's like they're narrowing down the possibilities for us, which means we can be more strategic in our approach.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got the input characteristics down. What about the output? What are we ultimately trying to find?
Right. They want the length of the substring, not the substring itself, just the length. So I'm thinking that means we probably don't need to store the actual substring anywhere, right? We can just keep track of the length as we go.
You got it. You're starting to think like a true coding ninja. That's a really clever optimization that can save you a lot of space complexity. Now, are there any constraints that jump out at you? Anything that limits your options in terms of time or space?
Not really. It just says find the length, but it doesn't mention anything about how fast it needs to be or how much memory we can use. No weird edge cases or anything like that.
Well, keep in mind that even when it's not explicitly stated, there's almost always this unspoken expectation of efficiency in coding interviews. So even if a brute force approach might technically work, it's always a good idea to at least think about if there are any optimizations you can make.
Right, right. So no brute forcing our way through this one. Got it. I'm sensing a challenge and I love it.
That's the spirit. I don't want to spoil the fun, so I'm not going to give you the answer right now. But what I want you to do is to take a minute, think back to all those hints we've been talking about, and see if any of them spark an idea. What data structures or algorithmic approaches come to mind when you think about this problem? We've got the input, the output, and the need for an efficient solution.
This is so cool. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle.
That's exactly what it is. And Being able to not just solve the problem, but also explain your thought process, that's what really impresses interviewers.
It's like you said before, it's not just about being a code monkey, it's about being a code detective.
You got it. It's
Right.
about being able to think critically, analyze the problem from different angles, and then use your knowledge and skills to craft the most elegant and efficient solution possible.
Wow, this has been so incredibly helpful. Seriously, I feel like I've learned so much today, and I'm actually kind of excited to tackle my next coding interview. It's like you've given me this whole new perspective.
That's fantastic to hear. And, the more you practice these skills, the easier they become. So keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, never stop challenging yourself.
I love it. Challenge accepted.
Awesome. And for those of you listening, remember that coding interviews, they can be tough, but they're also incredibly rewarding. So go out there, embrace the challenge, and show the world what you can do.
Yes. And remember, sometimes the biggest challenges lead to the greatest rewards. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of coding interviews. Until next time, happy coding, everyone.